It's live now, it's running.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Traffic and Transportation Decision Meeting. I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. We are meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governance by the COVID-19 pandemic. Previously, the law stated that all members had to be present in the room to make formal decisions in meetings. However, the law was amended in response to the COVID-19 emergency and councils are able to hold public meetings virtually. This is in accordance with the local authorities' coronavirus flexibility of local authority meetings regulations 2020 number 392, otherwise known as the regulations. Members of the public are invited to view this meeting and there has been an opportunity for written representations to be submitted. Those present are requested to keep their microphones on mute and to only turn them on when they are called to speak. Members are requested to keep their cameras turned on at all times. Officers are requested to turn their cameras on only when they're presenting the reports or answering questions. If anyone would like to speak, please write their name and RTS in the chat function. That's request to speak. I would now invite members to introduce themselves and then I'll go on to officers. So, Councillor Bersher.
Good afternoon, Lynn. Councillor Simon Bosher, Conservative spokesman for Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Heaney.
Good afternoon, Lynn. It's Councillor Graham Heaney. I am the Labour Group spokesman on Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you. And I'll go through the officers as I see their names. I mean, if I miss you out, you'll have to tell me, okay? So first of all, Pam.
Yep. Good afternoon, I'm Pam Turton. I'm the Assistant Director for Transport at Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you, Pam. Felicity.
Hi, Felicity Tippery, Transport Planning Manager at Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you, Felicity. Simon.
Simon Bell, Principal Public Transport Officer at the City Council.
Thank you, Simon. Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin McKee. I'm the Parking Manager for Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you, Kevin. Hayley Chivers.
Hi, I'm Hayley Chivers. I'm Strategic Transport Lead for the City Council.
Have I missed out? Thank you, Hayley. Have I missed out any other officers who are present? I think Richard.
Hi all, Richard Lancaster, Project Manager in the Transport Planning team.
Thank you, Richard. And Wayne?
I am Wayne Layton, I'm Finance Manager here at Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you. Any more officers that I've missed out? And we have some visitors as well. We've got John Hamer from Voy.
That's the one, yeah. It's John Hamer from Voy. I'm a city relationship manager.
And you're involved with the e-scooters, yes?
That's right, yeah. Representing Voy.
Lovely, thank you, John. And we have Eric.
Hi everyone, Eric Hasselbalk here, Senior Operations Manager at Voy e-scooters.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome.
Thanks.
Have I called on everybody now?
I think Michelle's saying she's got some technical issues, but hopes to join us. Michelle Love.
What a surprise having problems with Teams. Right, let's start the ball rolling, if I can find where I'm supposed to be. First of all, have we got any apologies, Anna?
None that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Any declarations of members' interests? Councillor Bosher? No? Councillor Heaney?
Well, it's a slightly awkward one because on item 5 on the safer travel to school, you have an item on Hailing Avenue. It's not split. Yes. I live in Avenue, close to the school. I don't intend to make any comment whatsoever on that issue, but I do want to comment on at least one of the other ones. So I don't think I can really absent myself from the meeting because I won't be able to take part.
No, quite.
So I think because I'm also not making the decision, I'm not compromised on that matter. But I'm just declaring that I do actually not participate in any comment on that at all. I think that covers me.
Thank you. have to wait a minute because I've got somebody at the door. Right, it was my next door neighbour collecting a parcel. Okay, I think we start now then. The first item on our agenda, well, apart from apologies and declarations, is Portsmouth e-scooters rental trial scheme. And who's going to present that? Is that you, Richard, or is it Hayley and anybody else? And I think people from Voy as well.
Hi, yeah, so I'm going to present the report and Richard and Roy are going to help with any questions. So, thank you. The report details the proposed rental e-scooter trial for Portsmouth, planned to launch in March 2021, following previous approval at the Traffic and Transportation Cabinet meeting in September 2020 to develop the scheme. The recommendations of the report are that the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation notes the progress that has been made with the e-scooter rental trial project since September 2020, approves Portsmouth City Council's participation in an e-scooter rental trial to commence in March 2021 until 26th of November 2021 to be achieved via the introduction of an experimental traffic regulation order, and approves Portsmouth City Council entering into a vehicle special order (VSO) agreement with the Department for Transport to authorise the use of e-scooters in the project area with the express delegation to sign the VSO delegated to the City Solicitor. The key developments to highlight since the September report are that the Department for Transport has confirmed that all trials and sub-trials must launch by the 31st of March 2021. The Student Transport trial formally launched in November when the Isle of Wight scheme commenced. The Southampton scheme plans to launch in similar timescales to Portsmouth in March. The supplier of Voy have been brought on board following a full procurement exercise. Voy have experience in this type of scheme, having been founded in 2018 in Sweden and currently operate in 10 cities in the UK, which is planned to increase to 21 by the end of March. There is a refocus to key worker journeys, working with the NHS for the scheme. And a major benefit for NHS staff and emergency service workers is that during full lockdown, such workers that use an e-scooter will be able to travel completely free of charge. And once full lockdown is lifted, there'll be a 75% discount to them. With this in mind, there'll be a citywide approach, and within the operational area, there will be approximately 25 e-scooter parking rack locations during the launch phase, and an indicative plan is shown in Appendix B. The e-scooter launch will involve the deployment of between 75 and 100 e-scooters, and will be progressively scaled up or down based on demand. The e-scooter parking locations will also be progressively increased during the launch phase, and any change in scale will be done with approval by the council. The scooters used in the trial will typically be allowed to use the same road space and routes as bicycles. However, geofencing technology will limit e-scooter movements to the defined operating area for the trial. In addition, within the operating area, it will also be possible to define go-slow areas where e-scooters will be physically restricted to lower speeds, and no-go zones where e-scooters will not be permitted and will turn off upon entry to the area. For the first month of the trial, the rental e-scooters will be restricted to 10 miles an hour, which will help enable safe identification of routes which need further restrictions. It is important to note that this will be a dynamic system, and additional go-slow and no-go zones can be added to the scheme by Voy within a matter of hours. Ongoing dialogue between Portsmouth City Council, the police, Voy and other stakeholders will be key to determining any further areas that need to be included in go-slow and no-go areas, particularly in the early stages of the trial. Ongoing stakeholder engagement has been taking place, including meeting with the police, local disability groups, transport operators and interest groups, and this will continue after the launch of the trial as feedback from these groups will be important. Marketing and communication campaign has been developed between the Council, Student Transport and Voy to ensure that there will be clear messaging to public around the trial. And so that sums up the key points to note, and the reasons for the recommendations are that it is required to undertake an experimental traffic order for rental scooters to be able to be used in the city. It is required to enter into a vehicle special order agreement with the Department for Transport to authorise the use of e-scooters in the trial area. The trial will be introduced in a safe and controlled manner, which will be closely monitored, and the trial supports the ambitions of Portsmouth's draft transport strategy, in particular Policy 10, supporting the delivery of innovations in micromobility. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Hayley. Councillor Bosch, Councillor Heaney, got your hand up.
I was just about to type when the question came rather more quickly than I had anticipated. Yeah. Can I just clarify? Did I hear Hayley say that the scooters in Portsmouth will be limited to 10 miles per hour? Because I understand they can go up to 15. And when we had the presentation, they said 15. And I was quickly looking through the report to see if I could find 10 miles per hour. So can that be clarified?
As far as, yeah, go on, Hayley.
Yeah, the restrictions are 15.5 mile an hour DOT, but for the first month, we will be limiting them to 10 mile an hour to make sure the trial's done successfully.
Okay. They also talked about slow speed areas, which was going to be my next question, because obviously there are things like pedestrian precincts, commercial road, Guildhall Square, etc., where pedestrians and e-scooter riders might well be mixing. Will they have further restrictions on their speed in pedestrianised areas like that?
Yes, they will. So, Richard, do you want to expand on what we're doing with the go slow and no ride zones for launch?
Yes, no problem. So we're still developing the operational area in terms of no go and go slow zones. But just in response to your point, so pedestrianised streets such as Commercial Road, Palmerston Road, sort of north side, they will be no go zones. So the e-scooters won't be allowed to actually go in those pedestrian areas. We're considering very carefully other such locations, such as Palmerston Road South, whether that should be a go slow zone. So we will facilitate the e-scooters, but it may be the case that we control their speed through that area. So that's the focus, and we appreciate, obviously, as we've sort of discussed previously, it's a fast-moving project, and we're sort of developing these these elements, and we have made a sort of a commitment to continue to brief councillors via opposition meetings and keeping all councillors involved in terms of some of the developments over the next few weeks as we finalise those proposals. And just touching on what Hayley said, it's not we don't reach a point at launch where everything stops. So this is going to continuously evolve. The first month's going to be important when we have got restricted numbers of scooters and also the restricted speed limit, so we can actually assess some of the routes to see how the 10 mile an hour speed is working and whether we're comfortable with that, with their scooters moving to 15 miles an hour in those locations, or whether they should be slow speed zones.
Okay. There's another question that I wanted to ask. I've been looking at the appendices, which looks at the route. I must admit, I don't really understand what the routes are, whether they are just the main roads like Cotton Road, Fratton Road, or whatever, or whether there are other areas of the city people can take the scooters. I have to say I've struggled to work out what the routes are here. Can anyone enlighten me, or am I just being a bit daft?
Shall I respond on that? So we won't be so the e-scooters won't be tied to specific routes. Now there will be, as we sort of explained, there will be the operational area. So the e-scooters won't be allowed to use certain roads within Portsmouth. Certainly sort of focused on where the speed limit is higher. But generally, the e-scooters will be able to move around the network using the parking hubs, and so they won't be sort of restricted to certain routes as they travel around.
Okay, that's interesting. I also wanted to ask a couple of questions about for the operators, really, if they'd be happy to answer the questions. The Coventry scheme, which was in action last year, was ended after 5 days, and I understand it was a VOI scheme. I've got two questions, really. One, have you implemented any scheme since that one stopped? And have the proposals you put in the Portsmouth scheme been drawing on the lessons from the Coventry scheme and the problems that have been existing there?
I'm happy to speak to that one, Councillor. So when we launched Coventry, we learned a few things about how we should launch in the UK. It was in a slightly too small zone, and there were a bit too many scooters, and we didn't have the right enforcement mechanisms in place. So following that, we agreed to wind down the service in Coventry until January, where we relaunched at University of Warwick following that. So a lot of learnings came out of Coventry, and in a way, it has really set us up for the following success we've had. Coventry was our third launch, and we have since gone on to do an additional 12 launches in the UK so far, where Portsmouth will be our 14th, I think, by the time we get to mid-March. So a lot of the learnings are actually those that we've applied to the launch plan in Portsmouth, which includes an ambassador program, which is an on-street team that polices and educates at the same time. It includes the 10 miles per hour speed for the first month or so to get the public really comfortable with the new scooters on the streets. But also importantly, we've done a lot of changes to our geofencing system and implementing the no riding zones, which completely shut off the scooter throttle. So a lot of good learnings came out of it, and I think it also, you know, those experiences were really vital to make sure all of the upcoming launches we've had since then have gone completely to plan. So that includes Bristol, Liverpool, and a lot of other launches like Cambridge and Oxford. So all things considered, it's gone really well since then.
Good. Can I just ask, is your company involved in Newcastle scheme?
No, it isn't. That is Neuron Mobility.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, have you got any more questions of Eric, Graham?
Well, I don't think so at the moment. I mean, I don't want to hog this, but aside my house and questions, I do have some comments I want to make about some issues around the trial, which I think are going to be important, and I'll happily come back on that because I expect Simon wants to get in and ask some, and I don't want to hog
Yes.
it.
Well, let Simon ask questions now, and then we'll come back to comments. Simon.
Hi, Lynn. Well, very unlike me, I don't have any questions. I have a few comments because actually I'd like to give my thanks to the team from Voy, because I'm sure they've been working very closely with the officers in traffic and transportation. But when it came down to the briefing, not that I was setting out to trip them up at all, but they seem to have solutions and plans for just about everything, and I'd say credit to them, because I like you, have probably been involved in hundreds of briefings like this, and I have to say it was one of the best that I've ever been involved in. They seem to have every T crossed and every I dotted as far as I'm concerned. Perhaps the only comment I'd make, Graham, is you did sound disappointed that you couldn't do 15 mile an hour instead of 10 mile an hour, but I have a few general comments I'll make, but I'll probably save them later on. But certainly no questions. They questions very thoroughly in the briefing.
Well, if you want to make some comments now, you can, and then we'll come back to Graham.
Okay. I probably have two comments, and they're not necessarily around the scheme itself, because as I said, they seem to have solutions, as I understand it, and Graham alluded to it. The whole of Portsmouth is sort of geo-fenced in, and it's little areas that will be taken out. So we've got an all-in, but taking some out, as opposed to what started off maybe a year, 18 months ago as just a piecemeal bit down the western side of Portsea Island as much as anything else. But my concerns, I think, surround the engagement with the police. And that's not necessarily from Voy and the City Council, because obviously looking at the report, it looks like there is already a good relationship there and they're working on it. It's more to do with the unregulated, in effect, illegal scooters that will come out. We already see evidence of them around our streets at this moment in time, and they are in certain areas problematic. My concerns are that by launching a scheme like this, and I've said from the outset, and I haven't changed my view, that I welcome it, is going to give the green light to every under 16 that it tends to be, and I've seen children as young as 5 or 6 riding these things, certainly up in Drayton and Farlington. It's effectively going to give the green light to those people to work on the principle that the scooters are now legal to use, when in fact they aren't. And my concerns in the report, if you like, that it doesn't really tackle how the police are going to address the clear upsurge in illegal scooter activity, because the scheme will be seen as being given the authorisation to everyone. It may be down to Richard or Hayley or whoever to try and allay some of those fears as to how we do it. The other comment that I'd make, and I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem, we've got the scheme running for 6 months from March through to November, and we're due to come out of lockdown in June, hopefully, all fingers crossed. It will be nice at some point, maybe July time, when there's probably going to be a TNT cabinet meeting, if we could have some sort of noting report on the interim, what lessons have been learnt, what things have been changed, and how it's generally going from a PCC perspective, rather than rely on social media view, if you like. So perhaps, and it's in your gift, Lynn, not mine, that we could have an additional recommendation, that we have some sort of interim noting report, just so that we can see how the trial is actually progressing. And I'm suggesting July, but I'm not precious about it, so that we've had 3 or 4 months worth of progress to see how it goes, rather than perhaps get to November and a decision is made either to extend or to cut. So at least we've got a good idea. Other than the police issue, that's really all I've got to say on it.
Thank you. Yes, Eric or John, have you got a comment on what Simon has just suggested?
Yes, I think that's absolutely something. Just on the sort of review point, I can probably speak to that. So I think we normally perform reviews after a couple of months with the local councils, just sort of as a matter of course, obviously, to report on how the trial has gone. And throughout, I think it's worth noting that throughout the sort of trial, you know, as Richard and Hayley alluded to earlier, it's not a sort of static thing. You know, we're constantly reviewing the operating zone and the usage and the sort of fleet sizes. So I think it's very much an iterative process, and how it looks at the beginning is not necessarily how it will look later on. But yeah, that's absolutely something we can work with Richard and Hayley on to take a sort of checkpoint sometime in the summer. And just on the police point, as I think has been covered, we've had engagement with Hampshire Constabulary. We had a briefing with Marcus Kennedy there, just to give him an introduction to Voy and the operation. So I think they're comfortable. And generally speaking, we work very closely with the police in cities. Obviously, they're sort of instrumental to the success of the operation, particularly early on with any incidents that might happen. So yeah, I think that's hopefully well covered as well.
I think, Lynn, if I could just come back, I hear what John's saying, but when it comes down to the police engagement, it's not so much the police engagement with Voy, because I think that looks like from the report it's been very thorough, and obviously Voy have control to a point of how their scooters are actually operated. It's more to do with how the police are going to engage with, well, they all seem to be black, the other scooters, how we're going to address the issues with illegal scooters being used. And I would imagine that there is going to be an upsurge for 2 reasons. Firstly, going into the summer months and out of lockdown is probably going to bring them out. And secondly, we suddenly have a large number of sort of ready orange scooters all around the city, to a lot of people, it's going to give them the green light to actually start using their own privately owned scooters in much the same way. And it's more to do with how the police are actually going to tackle that particular issue rather than their engagement with Voi.
Eric, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, happy to speak to that one. So in Northamptonshire and Liverpool, we've had a lot of success working together with the police on public awareness campaigns on private e-scooter usage versus rental e-scooters. So distinguishing between the two and educating on why private e-scooters are still illegal for the time being, and why rental e-scooters are being allowed by the DFT. So I completely agree that it's something we should tackle together with the police force as much as we can do from Voi's side. And I think it would help to do this as an ongoing thing during the trial. So yeah, we're more than happy to engage on that level and support where needed for public outreach.
Thank you, Eric. Graham, did you want to come back with some comments?
Yes, Lynn, thank you. Just briefly. One of the things I think in looking at the evaluation, and I know there's quite a bit of work going on between DFT and us, is to get a sense of what the shift in transport is in the use of e-scooters. I mean, I have been a little bit sceptical, as you know, about their potential to be an important source of alternative transport. And I'm obviously, you know, if the facts change, my opinion will change. So I'm very interested to know what the modal shift is in this respect. So, for example, if it is from cars to scooters, that would potentially be quite a good thing. But if it's from public transport and cycling to e-scooters, I'm not sure what the overall benefit necessarily is, other than people having a different mode of transport. So I think we need to get into the depth of what that actually means, and that will obviously happen as the trial towards the end of it. I mean, I completely agree with Simon's comments about the private e-scooters. I mean, I've raised this point before, as you know, and Simon will know as well, about this, and the fact that there is no enforcement action whatsoever being taken about the illegal private e-scooters being used on the road. I know it's difficult. I know the police have a lot of other things on their agenda to do, and lots of other pressures. But honestly, this is an issue that I think we're going to get a lot more comment about from residents, and we do need to see the police taking some action on this one, I think. So we're going to have to maybe engage with them as local councillors to say, you know, something does need to be done. It's partly a safety issue, but it's also about the potential irresponsibility of the use of these things. The e-scooter rental people, I think, will hopefully use them responsibly. I think there's reasonable evidence they will, but we've got to be aware that that isn't always the case. So I do think there's going to have to be some more action on that. And we need to reassure some groups that are very concerned about e-scooters, and some cyclists are, but also some people like the RNIB are concerned about the pavement use of these. And we really need to make sure that e-scooters don't become a hazard for pedestrians by using pavements on a regular basis. It seems to me that is a really potential problem that we may have if people aren't prepared to use them sensibly. We've got to have a bit of respect for each other. And e-scooter riders have got to respect that pedestrians can't always jump out of the way if they're coming towards them. So that sort of thing. So, but otherwise, you know, I think the trial should go ahead. I'm happy with that. I also agree with some sort of interim report. It'd be useful to get that, because I think, as we've discovered today, even things we were briefed about a week or two ago have changed slightly. So we would like to see what the progress is and what's happening on that, so we can feed back on it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Graham.
Sorry, Lynn, I was just going to say, I mean, I take on board your points you're making about the police, and I think there needs to be some work with regards to private ones. But I've certainly had in Drayton Farlington correspondence from 4 different irate parents who've had their child's electric scooter confiscated by the police. So I do know that they are taking some action. I wouldn't say they're policing every single one of them, because clearly they've got other priorities. But in each instance, they were being ridden irresponsibly. Whether they went back to the families or not, with the scooters, I don't know, or maybe there might well have been some sort of lecture in the parents' company, shall we say, but certainly up in my neck of the woods, they have taken some action where they confiscated them, and I suspect that we're not alone. It can't just be a Drayton and Farlington thing, but I think it's more about a public awareness program, and Eric was pretty right in what he was saying, that we do need to get some sort of campaigns going that actually seek to address private scooter issue and reinforce the message that they are still illegal to actually use.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, I mean, I would like to stress this is essentially a trial, and I'm hoping it leads to government legislation on the private scooters. And that's not just on the buying of them, but the selling of them as well. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I've written to the DFT and got a sort of very non-committal reply. But I'm just hoping that's going to happen, because I think the actual scooters themselves are a wonderful way of getting cars off the road, an easy way of getting from A to B. And of course, these particular ones, the Voi ones, are essentially aimed at commuters. It's not your 15, 16-year-olds. And the 16-year-olds, yes, because you have to be 16 to get a license and have a license to be able to hire the scooters. So so I'm hoping that it will lead to legislation, but that's my personal viewpoint. But I think a lot of people feel exactly the same way. So are you happy for this to go ahead? Simon, Graham, you're in support, aren't you? Fine. So yes, I've noted the progress made. I'd like to thank the officers and Voi, because they've done a heck of a lot of hard work. And I echo what Simon says, an absolutely brilliant presentation from Voi, covering absolutely everything. So it's really sort of reassuring to know that you're dealing with a company that has thought of everything, we hope. You never know what's going to turn up to you. So yes, I'm noting the progress, and I'm approving the council's participation, the scooter rental scheme, and the vehicle special order with the DFT. So thank you, Eric and John, for attending and answering our questions. And good luck with the rest of the scheme, the implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Right, next one is Casualty Statistics Analysis Report, and I think that's Michelle. And welcome, Michelle. You weren't here when everybody introduced themselves, but you now introduce yourself to the whole world, well, at least to Portsmouth.
They don't know me already. I'm disappointed, I have to say. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Michelle Love. I'm the Safer Travel Manager for Portsmouth City Council. Apologies for my late arrival. It was purely technology related this afternoon. So, but fingers crossed, it won't crash again. So, the first of the reports that I'm presenting today is the Speed Reduction and Casualty Measures report. Apologies, because I wasn't here at the beginning. There has been a deputation for this on behalf of Portsmouth Cycle Forum. Would you like me to read that first?
Yes, thank you. I'd forgotten about that, Michelle.
Okay.
Apologies to Ian Saunders. I didn't really forget about you, Ian. There's just lots of things going on.
No, that's fine. So we received a deputation for this report from the Portsmouth Cycle Forum, so I will run through this in brief before I start going through the report. So the Cycle Forum have submitted comments saying that the report that we put forward is 3 years. However, they would prefer to see it highlighting data in 5-year windows, 5 years being the minimum time frame to detect any long-lasting trends. And then it requested that cycle casualties are not listed by severity. Therefore, it's not, they pointed out that it may not be representative given the number of serious cycle casualties went up as a share of all cycle casualties in 2019. They've supplied a graph and they have made suggestions about Appendix 1. In general, that were positive, but it could be improved by sorting the sites with the same total number, ranking them where casualties have occurred most recently, because we gave 3 years of data for each site to make the document easier to view. So the response to that would be, all of those comments absolutely noted, very positive, and amendments can be made to the report in order to be able to include the appropriately sourced graphs and charts that they have included in their response. So we can take that and add that into the final public-facing document. The report itself, the purpose is to consider the locations suggested for speed reduction measures. Oh, sorry, 1 second, I'm on the wrong report. My apologies.
That's the next one.
Yes, I know. Sorry, just let me change the report over. Okay, is to document the number of road traffic collisions based on the Stats 19 statistics. Stats 19 statistics are submitted to us by the police and include all reported accidents where there is a casualty. So the difference being that there are obviously some accidents that happen within the city that are damage only to either property or vehicles. They don't come into this analysis. The recommendation is that future road safety infrastructure projects are selected using the annual casualty report, and that it's used alongside results of speed surveys, stakeholder correspondence and requests, and anecdotal evidence from behavioural change and enforcement events in order to be able to prioritise schemes to align with or determine the available budget. The contents of the report places Portsmouth in the contents of the national picture. It also shows that over the last 5 years, the number of casualties has reduced from a complete total of 663 to 563 between 2015 and 2019, and demonstrates where those reductions have taken place. It describes our statutory duty in that we must prepare and carry out a programme of measures designed to promote road safety and carry out studies into accidents arising out of the use of vehicles on roads or parts of roads. That's the Council's statutory duty under Section 39 of the Road Traffic Act 1988. It also includes where the Stats 19 data comes from, which is the police reporting system. The report then goes on to describe in monetary terms, which is obviously always difficult to quantify, but we've used the Department for Transport statistics to show how much an accident costs. So the different types of accidents obviously being fatal, serious and slight, depending on their severity. And that cost is the cost related to policing, ambulance service, insurance, damage to property, and a value that they have calculated the human cost. So whether that be time off work or other, sort of longer stays in hospital, etc. The evaluation, the final section of the report provides a data evaluation. So that will be used, that identifies the trends that we have laid out in the report. So going through them, motor vehicles remain the most common type involved in road traffic collisions, and then cyclists and motorcycles. Males account for the vast majority of casualties, and females account more for the casualties that occur as passengers in vehicles. The vast majority of road traffic collisions happen on single carriageway roads and during daylight hours. The highest risk group is younger drivers. The biggest cause of accidents is failure to look properly or poor individual decision making. So that's the police reporting terms that we're using in order to keep it in line with the statistics that we've been given. So as we go forward, we will use the statistics within the road safety report alongside the other examples that we've highlighted of anecdotal evidence and speed data in order to be able to inform how we spend the local transport plan speed reductions budget or any other funding that is allocated in order to be able to make changes to the road to reduce speeds. So this will become the document where these schemes it will provide a starting point for those schemes in order to be able to cross-reference against casualty data so that we know that funding that is allocated for that particular measure is going to the area that needs it most. That's a synopsis of the report. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Simon, do you want to go first this time?
Yes, if I can, please, Lynn. I've got a couple of questions for clarification, if I can, Michelle. I'm looking at, I don't know what page it's on. It's to do with Portsmouth, and it's a blue graph, effectively.
Okay.
Sorry, a blue table, which talks in terms of how number of pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, car occupants, and the figures there. I've got a column there that says other. What does other mean?
Bear with me one moment. Let me just pull the report up.
Page 3, I think it is. There's two graphs. There is a table of data and an associated graph above it just to put some colour and context into it.
Okay, sorry, my system is really slow today. I can only apologise. It's
No, it feels it's Thursday.
I know, but it's still got a whole day to go. It's okay. Just bear with me one moment, and I will attempt to give it a kick to get it into life. Come on. I'm really sorry. Sorry. It's yeah,
Well, it was just to put a bit of context. It's you've got a table that goes over the past 5 years, and it talks in terms of road casualties. There's an equivalent one for national by the looks of it, but it talks in terms of pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, car occupants, and other. I'd just be interested to know what the other is that doesn't fall into any of the other categories. The other aspect of that same thing, if you follow down through the report, it certainly, when it talks about car occupants, it identifies male versus female, age groups, and all the other bits and pieces. Do we also expand that data out for things like pedestrians in certain instances? Are we talking elderly pedestrians? Are we talking young children? Those sorts of things. I'd be interested to know how that comes. And I guess my third question on the same table, is it following a DFT template? Because being very topical, it might be nice to have another line of data there of e-scooter casualties, perhaps going forward. I'm hoping they're all zeros, but with the prevalence of privately owned scooters and the way a lot of teenagers actually use them, that sort of data will be pretty useful, I think, in future reports.
yeah. Sorry, I found the report. Apologies. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, that's. Hold on.
I'm not looking at that. The graph above that you started with. There you
This
go.
one?
What's that page?
That's
great. Right. You come down one more page and you're there.
Right. Okay.
But you can equally use that particular. Yeah, that's the one I'm on about. You can see there you've got a column on the second end right, which says other. Just wondering what those casualties were. What were they actually doing? Because they don't fall into what you might see as the four significant groups: pedestrian, cyclist, motorcyclist, and car.
Yeah. So at the moment, that would be. This obviously comes from a standard DFT source, which is the Stats 19 data. So I completely take your point about e-scooters and things like that. At the moment, those kind of unlicensed vehicles, so, it can be anything, horse and cart, quad bike, e-scooter, they fall into that category of other at the moment. However, obviously, as we've just been discussing, with the increase of those different types of transport modes, such as e-scooters, I think going forward, to have that change in the data to drill it down more to e-scooters and things like that, rather than other, yes, I can see that would happen. So, but yeah, at the moment, it's basically any other mode of transport that doesn't fall into the four main categories that they take the majority of data for.
And with regards to pedestrian data there, which seems to be reasonably flat when you compare it to some of the others which are coming down, do we drill down into the data there? I haven't clicked the link, but do we drill down into age and sex profile in the same way that we do with car accidents?
Yes, it can be. It doesn't come with the Stats 19 data as standard, but we can request that data in order to be able to make more informed decisions.
Right. So, in other words, we do have access to that information. Yes. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. I've got a comment about the recommendations, Lynn, but I don't want to hog it all from Graham if he's got any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. I was looking at the pedestrian casualties, and the distinction is made between slight and serious, and I wasn't quite sure where the boundary is drawn. How do we record slight? How do we record serious? Hospital admission, non-hospital admission, or?
Yeah, that is included in the content of the report.
Is it? Oh, right.
Yeah. Hold on one second. Let me just, or at least I put it in the draft. It wouldn't be beyond me to then remove it for some. There we go. Section 4.3, casualties by type. So obviously, fatal is fairly simple to define. Serious accident, and it gives the what is defined in these statistics as a serious injury and slight injury. So that will give you context of what they would what these statistics use as their definitions of slight and serious.
Right. And just regarding the cycle ones, I mean, Ian Saunders made the point about we don't actually split out the casualties on cyclists by the same. Is it because we just haven't, you could do so many and we haven't done it, or we can easily get the data for that?
They've actually provided the data, which is really helpful for them. Right. So in this instance, we've used a standard set of data. But yeah, we have noted that, other data sources can sound like a TV program, don't I? Other data sources are available. And therefore, yeah, we're absolutely fine. We'll just give the caveat that we will, source them and check them. But there's absolutely no reason why that can't be included in order to able to provide greater detail.
Right. Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Anything else from either of you? No? Okay, well, I'm happy to accept the recommendation.
Sorry, Lynn, I didn't get off mute quick enough. I want some clarification around the recommendations, to be quite honest. Recommendation A is pretty black and white in the fact that it's going to use the annual casualty report as the recognised source of data to prioritise these schemes. And then you've got B, which sort of then takes into consideration other bits and pieces of anecdotal information. Why is it being split into a recommendation A and a recommendation B? Because surely you could actually rewrite that as one recommendation. And perhaps I'm being a little bit pedantic, but if you take recommendation A in isolation as what actually determines what the money is spent on, then effectively you are factoring out the anecdotal evidence, you're factoring out the cycling near miss data and stuff like that, where you haven't actually got a casualty, but you've got a problem area. And if you look at one of the schemes that's happening in Drayton and Farlington that I've been badgering on about, which is the crossing at Farlington Avenue, there's been one accident there in 2019. Now, arguably, that would fall foul of these recommendations in favour of other schemes. But the fact that it is prevalent that people are driving through that crossing without noticing the green light, so there is an issue there, it wouldn't necessarily have highlighted what we've actually got. And I wouldn't want to think that we hang our hat on recommendation A only when it comes to determining schemes and get reports back saying there's no accident statistics at this junction, when we know, perhaps as ward councillors or anecdotal evidence, or even through the cycle forum and the cycle near miss data, that there is a problem with a particular area that needs addressing. And I would effectively take the first part of that recommendation and build it in alongside the second recommendation and make it one, and get rid of recommendation A in its entirety, so that you are taking all things into consideration and not just hanging everything on accident casualty report as a means to determine where the budget is spent.
Yeah, I see you take your point there, but I think the fact that the annual casualty report is a recognised source of data, and in addition you got the other bits. So I think that the two melded together.
Well, that's exactly what I'm suggesting to you, Lynn.
Yes, what I'm saying is that I think you need to have in that bit about the annual casualty report being a recognised source of data, as opposed to something that we've just manufactured, along with the rest.
I see what you're saying, and but you're going on to say to prioritise schemes to align with or determine the available budget. So you're using that report to determine the budget, and the second bit doesn't really add anything to it. I would argue that you could take all that to determine the available budget, and then say, and then add on, and will be used alongside the results of, and build and add it all into one. So therefore, your recommendation is considering everything, and it is perhaps not being used as a reason to determine something where there might be an issue. We know what the cycle forum are doing for the city, in so much that they are identifying areas where there are near miss. Now, there may not have been a cycle casualty there, just a lot of near misses, in which case it could fall foul because it doesn't tick recommendation A. And I would rewrite that into one, Lynn. I really would.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Michelle? Seems sensible to me.
If you would like it written into one recommendation, Councillor Stagg, then we can have it written into one recommendation.
Have you got any reason why it shouldn't be? I mean, I don't want to suggest something which is.
No, well,
I'm trying, Lynn. I'm trying to be helpful. I mean, you've got to make the decision on the recommendation now. You can't be rewritten after.
No.
The reason that it was split into two was to try and reflect the fact that we have the statutory duty. Yes. So we have to take the casualty data, and we have to, under our statutory duty, study those sites where there are casualties and implement, if possible, schemes that will reduce those casualties. Yes. But alongside that, as Councillor Bosch has rightly pointed out, we have a lot of other sources of evidence, anecdotal evidence, near mishap, people where we've spoken to people through behavioural change events and things like that. And so the purpose of the two recommendations is almost, it was meant to be the other way, to say this is the statutory requirement, but we will also take into account those other sources of data.
But you see, that's not how I interpreted what you were trying to say. I mean, I would suggest that if you take recommendation A in its entirety, and then with recommendation B, you lose the bit, the annual casualty report, but take all the rest of it. Yeah. So in other words, you read all of recommendation A, full stop, and you say, this will be used alongside the results of the other things, and you can make it one, in which case you've got your catch-all because you've identified the annual casualty report as being a driver, but you've also gone on to say that by separating them out, in theory, you could take recommendation A in isolation, if that's what you wanted to do, as a means to decline a scheme where there is clearly anecdotal evidence. So I'm perhaps coming at it from a negative point of view and trying to get it to a positive position, shall we say.
Well, I'm happy to accept both recommendations because I know what they mean. Okay. Right. The next item, I think, is item number 5, safety investments, safer routes to school.
Safer routes to school, yeah. That's me.
Again, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So excuse me a minute, can I just confirm those 2 previous recommendations are unchanged?
Yes, because I think we have a problem if we change them, don't we?
Couldn't say that, but hey ho.
Anna, what's the precedent? I
Well, I suppose in a previous one, I think about RP said you changed the wording at the meetings. You'd have to decide now if you want to change it.
Oh, can we do that? Is that legal to do that?
I think
Lynn, you can change the recommendations to anything that you choose to do. All I'm saying is you have to do it now at the meeting. You can't have the public meeting and then rewrite your recommendations tomorrow morning.
No, quite. So the wording then should be that future road safety infrastructure projects are selected using the annual casualty report as a recognized source of data to prioritize schemes, along with the results of speed surveys, stakeholder correspondence, and requests and anecdotal evidence from surveys completed of behavioural change and enforcement events to prioritize schemes to align with or determine the available budget. So that gets it all into one.
One recommendation.
Yes.
Okay.
Have you got that, Anna? Do you understand?
Yeah, yes, thank you, yes.
That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Simon.
No problem.
Okay. So, yes, we'll move on.
Next one.
I am on the next one, yes. So the next report is the Safer Routes to School Budget 2020-2021. Again, there are deputations. So I will quickly go through the deputations before I start on the body of the report. So the first deputation is from Kimberly Barrett, who is, I believe, she lives in Milton Ward. So, and she's been asked to put forward a request on behalf of a number of members of the community. So she's basically a resident representative. And you'll see as the body of the report, as I present the body of the report, that one of the proposed schemes we have is for the vehicle activated signs outside Moorings Way Infant School on the junction of Moorings Way and Warren Avenue in order to highlight to drivers their speed. There have been 6 slight accidents and 1 serious accident there in the last 5 years. The content of a report is that obviously the school has a breakfast club, after school club, so there is traffic there from around 7:30 in the morning until 6 p.m. in the evening. It gives anecdotal evidence of a near miss for a family, again coming in and out of the school. It mentions that the junction is part of National Cycle Network Route 222, so it would be an excellent opportunity by installing signs and raising awareness to promote the safety of young children, but also wider measures that would benefit the whole community. She highlights the fact that some parents don't feel that it's safe for their children to cycle to school, particularly cycling down Warren Avenue, and she gives her support for the vehicle-activated signage. So that is Kimberly's. She said, because the structure of the report is there is one large scheme and then there are suggested schemes for the remainder of the budget, and she would like this site, Moorings Way, Warren Avenue, to be considered as high priority. So obviously her deputation is noted. The content of the report says that there are the 3 sites that we're considering for vehicle activated signage, and in response to her deputation, the team can say that if this site, Moorings Way, Warren Avenue, is not completed within this budget, then obviously when the LTP implementation plan for 21-22 comes forward and the Safer Routes to School budget is proposed through that, then we can definitely add it to the prioritisation list for next year, even if we don't get it into what is this financial year's budget. The second deputation comes from Mayfield School. Just bear with me one moment. I know that sounds terrible after the speed at which I did it last time, but they've sent in quite a long letter.
Excuse me, with the deputations, they had to be read out sort of word for word. But
oh, do they? We could be here a while. Okay. Okay, so this one's from Mayfield School. I'll go through it. We are writing to share our position with respect to agenda item 4.2. As a governing body and leadership team, we remain appreciative of the continued investment to improve the facilities within and around the school, to realise a first-class environment for learning and the creation of a state-of-the-art community school serving the needs of our local area throughout the year. We've engaged positively over a number of years with the DFE, PCC and building contractors to evolve and refine ideas to ensure that the new build on the current school site meets the high expectations of our pupils, parents and local community have of our school. Sometimes this has meant we've had to think outside the box and challenge the obvious, easy design solution. Mayfield School has also championed key initiatives of the Council and Government around diversifying modes of transport to school and reducing traffic flow around Portsmouth's largest school. This is evidenced by our enthusiastic participation in schemes such as Cycle to Work, Cycle Proficiency, Stomp for Stamps. Equally, we structure our day to ensure a staggered entrance and exit for over 1,700 children and staff, plus parents and carers. An important point we wish to bring to the attention of the committee is that from July 2021, the number of routes off the school site will be reduced, and there will be a concentration of parents and pupils exiting via Hewitt, Kensington and Mayfield roads. We predict that there will be a significant increase in traffic around these junctions and are concerned that the provision of a street crossing will not safely manage traffic people flow. These issues, we believe, are compounded due to sticking plaster restrictions on local traffic, which has inadvertently created rat runs within the local area. The initial report provided by the Safer Travel team last September, after 18 months of visits to site, resulted in a sensible and innovative long-term vision for improving the school, and we fully support that solution that provided both solutions to the new school entrances and the daily continual logjam of nose-to-nose traffic in our crowded streets around the school. We called upon the committee to consider this more holistic approach, and in particular the creation of a one-way system for roads around Mayfield School. If the pandemic has taught us anything in terms of procedures and safe working, it is that any such schemes to support parents and pupils' ability to walk should be passive and work seamlessly without further intervention or interaction required. The one-way schemes outside both Lyndhurst and College Park schools have been shown to work, and local traffic quickly adopted these schemes without causing more bottlenecks locally. As a school, we have looked carefully at the rollouts of the school street scheme and the practicalities implications of running this. It is clear to us that whilst initially there was a proposal we were happy to look into, the reality across areas where this programme has rolled out is that school staff would be placed in potentially highly confrontational situations with local residents who have already shown great patience with the various building projects undertaken on this site. The deployment of school staff to essentially manage traffic flow will pull them away from their core business of teaching and supporting children, particularly in these times when it is vital that staff are 100% focused on catch-up. One of the key drivers to opt for a new build over a refurbishment was to ensure that Mayfield School becomes a truly inclusive school, able to offer the best education to all, regardless of physical disability. We are proud that from September 2021, we will be able to accommodate all children and staff regardless of mobility needs, something our 1930s building could never do. Consequently, any partial street closure would not support the independent and unfettered access that we aspire to have. Whilst we right to share the views of the governing body and the leadership team, we believe that local ward councillors will have the good sense of the needs and wishes of their residents, and will no doubt, as their continued involvement in the first of multiple consultation sessions, understand the need to direct the flow of traffic in the area with a wider conjoined solution, such a one-way system around the new school build site. We welcome the intention of the report to continue the work with the school, governors and councillors to find a solution, and to implore this committee to not close their minds to a wider scheme working for all. In summary, we respectfully ask the members to consider our school motto, "Your only limitation is your ambition," and we challenge the process to evolve past the easy off-the-shelf solution and be more ambitious to find the ideal. Respectfully, David Jeeps, Head Teacher, Sarah Williams, Chair of Governing Body. That is word for word. Sorry, excuse me.
Michelle.
Okay, so the body of the report. The purpose of the report is to consider the location suggested for safer routes to school measures as part of the Safer Routes Improvement Local Transport Plan 2020-2021 programme that was agreed in 2020. The recommendations are that it's recommended that the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation approves the spend at Mayfield School, junction of Mayfield Road, Kensington Road, and at least one other location from Moorland Road, Moorings Way, Warren Avenue, and Hayling Avenue. So the background of the report is that travelling to education is the most single common purpose for walking journeys, and there is a huge potential to increase the proportion of children walking to school. A generation ago, 70% of primary school children walked to school. This has dropped to just over half, 51%. There is a target in the cycling and walking investment strategy to have 55% of primary school children walking to school by 2025. The Safer Routes to School programme, part of the local transport plan, is to promote safer, more environmentally sustainable and healthier ways of getting to and from school, with particular emphasis on walking and cycling through engineered changes. In addition, we enhance those engineered changes with our behavioural change programmes such as Stomper, the Pompey Monster, and there are other developments that are coming further down the line in September 2021. So the site selection, obviously Mayfield School is one of them, and the reasons given are those that the governors have cited in their letter, is that it's a through school and has been since 2014, and that offers education from 4 to 16 years. It accounts for 1,420 of those pupils. It also has a nursery on site, and current pupil numbers are 1,349, and the entire school building is being pulled down, and a new school building built at the northern end of its current site on the junction of Mayfield Road and Kensington Road. The proposed Safer Routes to School scheme was put together following a traffic assessment at the areas around Mayfield School. The key issues that we noted were that parents parked as close to the school as possible, which then caused obviously build-up of traffic around the school entrances, particularly parking on the junctions, double yellow lines, etc. And there are some painted hatched areas at the junction of Kensington Road, Mayfield Road, that were installed to try to train drivers to look at them and give more space to people coming out of that junction. The idea is that those need to be formalised to give better sightlines and visibility for pupils, those travelling in and out of school, and also this will complement where the new entrance is. So yeah, it's proposed to construct new build-outs to increase space for pedestrians and cyclists, reduce the ability to park directly outside the school, narrow the carriageway width to provide a reduced crossing distance, and a school crossing patroller will be provided. So that is the Mayfield school site. In addition to that, we're proposing that vehicle activated signs are placed on of the following, at least one of the following options, however, as many as can be done once the Mayfield scheme has been costed out. Moorland Road, this is linked to Newbridge School, Milton Cross Academy and Portsmouth Academy, so that's 2,000 pupils attend those three schools. There have been casualties, but we have been in conversations with Hampshire Constabulary, residents and local councillors about speeding along Moorland Road. It's a one-way road, and the fact that there have been several damage-only accidents taken place in the last sort of 18 months. Vehicle activated signs give a clear visual indication to drivers how fast they're going, and the aim of them is to lead to behavioural change of drivers and a reduction in speed. The second site is Warren Avenue and Moorings Way, which is the one that Kimberly wrote to us about. There have been 6 slight accidents there. Apologies, I think I said 5 earlier. And the average speed there is 23 miles an hour, but the 85th percentile, at which 85% of the traffic will be travelling at or below, is 29 miles an hour, and this is a 20 mile an hour advertised speed limit road. And again, the points that were raised in the deputation, it is not only is it a infant school, it's also a cycle route, and it's also heavily used by residents in order to be able to access Milton Common. Hayling Avenue, it's a long straight road. It feeds in, pupils use it to go to Langston Infant and Junior Academies and Milton Cross. That's a total of 1,440 pupils attending. Again, it would be the implementation of vehicle activated signs. And again, the 85th percentile speed on that road is 29 miles an hour, and the average speed is 24 miles an hour on an advertised 20 mile an hour speed limit. That is the body of the report. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Graham, I know you said you weren't going to comment on Hayling Avenue, but do you want any questions or any comments on any of the others?
Well, it's sort of a question about later, because I actually was able to read the letter lunchtime before the meeting, and the head seems to indicate that the work that was done on the issues produced a rather more comprehensive report about possible solutions, and he appears disappointed in the proposals that have come forward today, because he seems to suggest that they are rather more limited and will not necessarily deal with the issues, and he seems to be making an appeal for a more comprehensive solution. So I'd like to ask, one, did the report actually produce a more comprehensive set of ideas? And why, if that was the case, are we proceeding with limited measures now and not something more comprehensive, or are we intending to go back and do more work at some point in the later development of the school?
And we met with Mayfield on the 10th of February, and so I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure which report he's referring to. So we had the first meeting with them earlier this month. Councillor Stagg and ward councillors for Copner attended, and we went through the options that we presented options to them. So the 2 options that we had are the options that are in this report at the moment and school streets. During the course of the meeting, the school and the local ward councillors brought up one-way streets and expressed their support for that. And the initial feedback that we've given back to the school is that, yes, we will investigate that. It doesn't fall under the remit of a safer routes to school, because it doesn't, by the nature of it, encourage or improve the possibilities to be able to walk and cycle to school. So the one-way system that they've requested, or that was discussed at the meeting, was a one-way system with Mayfield Road and Kirby Road. So it's a fairly large-scale one-way system that they advocated at the meeting. So the point at which we're at now is that if this is approved, then yes, we can go ahead and implement it, but we are still committed to working with the school to find a solution that, or that is a balance for everybody. So the first time that I personally heard that that a one-way system was what the school wanted was at the meeting 2 weeks ago. So we haven't had time to investigate it fully. And obviously a one-way system would be implemented via a traffic regulation order and via a public consultation. So whereas the Safer Routes to School scheme is obviously brought to this committee. So at the moment, it's still a work in progress. The report was written and we've decided to bring it so that if after further discussions with the school they do decide that this would be the best option in order to be able to benefit pupils and to increase the space outside the school, that approval is given. And so then we can continue with the scheme. If the result is that the school and the governors and ward councillors would like to pursue the one-way system, then we would bring another report back to TNT to say how that money was going to be reallocated.
Yeah, I understand the answer. Thank you for that. Just the letter implied that there'd been some other work going on over a period of time and some sort of representation to the school in September with some ideas, and I don't know.
There is some separate highways design work going on as part of the planning process, so the planning permission, and our colleagues in highways design are already designing, vehicle accesses and dropped curbs and things like that. So it may be that is, and they were present, they were part of the meeting that we had on the 10th of February. So the work has been ongoing for quite a while, but the work that we're doing, the Safer Routes to School work, was brought to our attention in about I think the first time I went down to the school was December last year. So yeah, we'll definitely work with our colleagues in highways design to ensure that anything that is implemented complements what they're already putting in.
Okay, that's helpful. That clarifies. Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Anything else, Graham? Simon?
No, I mean, I wasn't going to make too much in the way of comments around this one, because obviously it's a local thing with local schools, and each has their own set of special circumstances, which comes out of the Safer Routes to School budget. I think Michelle has sort of adequately addressed it, because I certainly, when I read the deputation from the head teacher looking at a one-way system, I thought a bit, ouch. I mean, I was the cabinet member he alludes to the one-way system around College Park and Lyndhurst, which was one I introduced as a cabinet member. But actually, when you look at it, that is a pretty simplistic north-south either side of the school one-way system. And it was as much being pushed for by the local residents as it was the school. It was even though you could argue a one-way system could be controversial, it wasn't at all at the time, because it was something that everybody wanted, particularly with the narrowness of the roads and the nature of the children there. But talking about the main, I think it was, what did you say, Kirby Road and Mayfield Road, they are major roads that go east-west through the centre of Cotner, between the London Road and Cotner Road. And I think quite rightly, you need to proceed with what you've already got, because to look at those two roads from making them a one-way system, it's not about the school there. It's about a large chunk of the residents that live in there and all the roads that go north-south off them for their entire length, which is probably several hundred properties that you're actually going to impact there by doing that. So I think the route is the right way, because you can do this within the budget quite safely. If there is an appetite for going down the one-way system, then I think that needs to be looked at carefully as a completely separate exercise altogether. Because as much as the school might want it, I suspect it's going to get quite a mixed reaction with those two roads from local residents when you actually look at it. But I'm glad you clarified that, because I was looking at it and thinking, how can you easily have a one-way system around Mayfield School, which isn't going to have a material impact on a large number of residents. And I think that needs to be looked at separately. But other than that, it's one of those where you look at the locality, you rely on the officer information when it comes to the issues around specific schools. And I'm quite happy to support it as it is, Lynn.
Lovely, thank you both. Yes, I'm happy to approve spending. If there's money available, obviously in all of them, Michelle, but I realise that money is tight. And I think we have to look at some other aspects of Mayfield School at a later date, because the one thing that concerns me, because I live just not far from there, and is, as I've said to you, Michelle, is Kensington Road, which is where the new exit and entrance for the junior section anyway is going to be, isn't it? And that uses a rat run by people trying to avoid the lights at the Copner Road, Burfields Road junction. So that's a potentially very dangerous area. So yes, I'm really happy to support that and approve it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one. Oh yes, speed and casualty. Oh yes, speed and casualty reduction measures. Yes. No, that's
right.
What we've just done. Is it?
No, we did the annual. We've done the casualty report, safer routes to school. So now it's speed reduction measures.
Yeah, fine. Good. Would you like to go ahead?
It's Michelle? Me again. Yeah.
It's
okay.
the Michelle Love.
No, this is the last one, I promise.
Okay,
I'm then going to be very quiet. Bear with me 1 second, because from memory, I think we have a deputation on this one as well, which I will read word for word. Right. Hold on 1 second. Safer routes to school, we've done. Oh.
I know I've had a few emails about it. I don't know about deputations.
No, that's fine. Actually, no, I've just been back. My apologies. We don't have any deputations, which is good news.
Good.
Okay, so speed reduction measure. The purpose of the report is to consider the location suggested for speed reduction measures as part of the LTP 2020-2021 programme that was agreed in December 2020. And that the recommendation is that it's recommended that the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation approves the spend from the speed reduction measure budget for measures on the junction of Dysart, Mansfield, Tredegar Avenue, the junction of Havant Road and Farlington Avenue, and Castle Road between Kings Road and Hambrook Road. So the background of the report gives the overall figures, a total of 1,752 reported road deaths in Great Britain in 2019, and then links into the statutory duty once again that was discussed within the casualty report. So the recommendations are on the junction of Dysart, Mansfield and Tregaron Avenue, that giveaway and crossroads ahead signage on the junctions are all put in. The purpose of this proposed action is to increase visibility. It's an emerging issue at this junction. There have been 4 incidents in 2019 where vehicles have failed to give way when emerging from Dysart Avenue. One of these resulted in serious injury to a pedestrian. The majority of these accidents have actually occurred within the pandemic, which did limit our ability somewhat to carry out large-scale speed data, so we carried out handheld surveys instead, and it showed that the speed range on that junction was between 14 and 39 miles an hour, and the average speed was 23 miles an hour, and the 85th percentile speed, so the speed at which up to 85% of the vehicles can travel, was 27 miles an hour. In addition to this, obviously we've had a lot of resident correspondence about this, and so this is proactive action that the council is taking in order to try and make this junction much more visible, to make drivers much more aware, and with the aim to reduce the number of casualties that have started to occur, particularly as there is a children's nursery located on the corner of that junction as well. The second scheme is the junction of Havant Road and Lower Farlington Road. That's anti-skid surfacing adjacent to the pedestrian crossing on Havant Road at the junction of Farlington Avenue. Sorry, apologies, that should be Avenue, not Road there.
And not lower either.
No, my apologies. And the purpose of this proposed action is to assist junction vehicles to stop to a slow at the pedestrian crossing immediately prior to the junction. Obviously, this was raised by Drayton and Farlington ward councillors that there were a lot of frequent near misses as vehicles tended to overshoot the stop lines for the signalised junction and encroach onto the pedestrian crossing. There has been one accident resulting in a serious injury to a pedestrian. However, obviously, we took into account the fact that we have had a lot of near misses reported at that junction. The third scheme is Castle Road between Kings Road and Hambrook Street. That's for 2 speed cushions to be located between the junction of Kings Road and Hambrook Street. As we know, under the DFT Emergency Active Travel Fund Tranche 1 in May 2020, there was an allocation to close the southern part of Castle Road between Hambrook Street and Western Parade, and that's currently under development to become a permanent scheme. Before this, we had reports that there were, particularly from residents, of vehicles speeding down Castle Road between Elm Grove and St Edward's Road. We did a fixed speed box survey in September 2019. The average speed was 22 miles an hour, but the 85th percentile speed was 28 miles an hour, and vehicle speed ranged from 5 to 39 miles an hour. So if vehicles continue at this speed, and then the closure of Castle Road becomes permanent, then obviously that could result in an increase in casualties, because the vehicles will have to take an alternative route, and travelling at that speed they may not be able to. So it's anticipated that the 2 speed schemes will complement each other when installed. The speed cushions will ensure that average vehicle speed is reduced along the northern section when approaching the southern section of the road that is closed, and that drivers will be able to safely take the alternative routes. That is the body of the report. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Graham.
Thank you, Lynn. I don't really have any questions. I mean, obviously, I completely defer to Simon on this one. His board, he knows what's going on there, and I wouldn't presume to suggest what's right or wrong. If he's happy, I'm happy. The other one, I think, makes sense in terms of complementing what's already going on there. I've not had any representations about it particularly, but I think it will be, if the ward council's happy with that, we recommend it. I'm happy.
Yes, businesses are as well, and residents. So that's because they've been asking for this for ages.
Good.
Thank you, Graham. Simon.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Well, I'm sure everybody is absolutely sick to death of me going on about the first 2 of these for the past year or so, something in that sort of order.
Children's safety is very important, so we're not sick to death, if you know. And I do believe in nagging. If you nag long enough, somebody will say, for God's sake, shut that woman up. So and do it. So I'm all.
So that's okay. So we'll equal opportunities with the sex. Then I'm the woman being shut up, am I?
Well, no,
I'm not saying anything.
I'm glad that they yeah, but then that they are important, and I'm glad that we're finally getting something done. Other than the glaring mistake in Lower Farlington Road, which is,
apologies for that,
as you know, about 600 yards down the road. So that's going to be an awful lot of anti-skid surface you're going to be doing on that.
We can't afford it. It's definitely Farlington Avenue.
Yeah, that's the LTP4 gone in one bout.
Yeah.
A couple of things about the Dysart Mansfield Tregarron one. Just to correct something that you actually said, Michelle, that I think you'll find that speed survey was actually done pre-pandemic on the back of 2 accidents we had in January of 2020 anyway, but that's just a moot point. The other thing I was going to ask is one of the things that I'd highlighted, and I know this will probably come as a separate report, but I just want to understand that it's in the pipeline. Directly opposite the nursery in the end of Dysart that was mentioned, there are no double yellow lines there, and vehicles are parking right up to the junction with Tregarron Avenue, so that they're actually probably obscuring the stop markings on the road, the hatched white lines. Are there plans for a TRO to extend or put in double yellow lines on that part of Dysart Road in the pipeline? Or if there aren't, can we, because I mean, that would come under as a separate report for TROs. I appreciate that. I'm not part of this, but I just want to understand that that is also on the radar as well.
Yes, it has been noted. It was too late to be included within this report without it having to then be amended. So we've chosen to continue with this report as it is. But yet your concerns and residents have raised concerns directly to Councillor Stagg about that as well. So we will look at how we fund that in order to be able to complement the additional signage. But yes, it is noted, and we will, move forward with that.
Cool. And as it's Drayton and Farlington, will the anti-skid surface be conservative blue?
I can't confirm that, I'm afraid. Sorry.
I wish you luck somehow.
we could possibly write into it, brought to you by Councillor Bosher. Would that help?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, Lynn, I'm not going to object to this. I welcome it. It was just because it's something that, as I say, you guys know I've been pushing on to the right to. When it comes to Castle Road, I can't really comment on that too much because I don't know too much about it. But I would imagine that what's being done there is as a direct result of pedestrianising that bit under the pandemic scenario that we actually had and just tried to get it all up. That's my assumption on that one.
The two schemes complement each other, yes. Yeah. The speed data that we have was carried out before the Castle Road was closed under the Emergency Active Travel Fund funding, but that showed that the average speed and 85th percentile speed was still very high, and obviously now there will be the added part of it where if they're travelling at speed down that road, they will then come to a dead stop. So, and to confirm, the anti-skid will be beige, just so you know.
What, you mean as in Liberal Democrat yellow?
No, but
I don't like it's orange anyway, Lib Dem, and I don't like orange. So.
It will be in accordance with the Design Manual for Road and Bridges.
Very well said, Michelle.
Michelle, can I ask? You said somebody mentioned about stop lines. Are they clear enough? Do they need to be repainted?
We've had COLAS out to ensure that they are within the standards of the contract, and currently they are. Those roads are inspected every 6 months under the terms of the contract, and if they fall short, then they will be added to the lining programme. So
okay, because I think somebody said that they're not that easy to see. So
the point that I was making, Lynn, is that the cars park on the south side of Dysart, so they're effectively parking in the lane as you approach Tregarron Avenue, and notwithstanding driver not paying attention, if they are, by the nature of what they're doing, obscuring where you have to stop, then that may well be a contributing factor. Hence if we put double yellows in that, it brings it back away from that, and the road markings become more visible.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I just wanted to add to make sure that the markings for the stop sign are bright enough that people can see them, drivers can see them. Lovely. Any more questions or comments? Well, I'm happy to approve all of that.
Thank you very much.
Right, and you can have a rest now. You can.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, I think the next item is Highbury Street. It's you, Kevin, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. There are two deputations. Do I read those before introducing the report, or shall I introduce the report and then read the deputations?
I think they go before the report.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the first deputation is from somebody who's written in support of the proposal. It reads, please find attached 2 photographs taken on the 19th of February. I send these in reply to several of the responses to the public consultation, which state that there is either not a problem of footway parking or that it has gone away. It hasn't gone away, and these photos could have been taken on most days over the last few years, either with this or with other cars parking or obstructing the footway. The cars are often parked obstructing all the footway. the result of which is pedestrians, wheelchair users and children are being pushed, children being pushed in buggies, having to use the cobbled carriageway. This is a public highway and not a private forecourt for the adjacent property. They have a small private area, but it is not large enough to accommodate a car. The homeowner can buy a residence permit and park in a residence parking bay anywhere in Old Portsmouth. Please read response 14 to the consultation. This is typical of the more timid footpath users who rely on the council taking the correct route to protect their rights. Please implement the recommendation. And the second, and then there are two photographs, which I think everybody's got a copy of. The second deputation is from Rebecca Crow and Christopher Jones. It reads, Dear all, reference above and the proposals for the double yellow lines in Highbury Street, I'd like to comment on one issue which we believe is very important to implementation of the scheme, which will affect both residents and visitors to the area that will use the new parking bay. Point 3.3 on page 2 of the report states with some conviction that there have never been double yellow lines in the turning circle behind the Duke of Buckingham pub. Whilst I realise that COVID restrictions have made matters difficult for everyone and that a site visit might be difficult, but I can state that the double yellow lines were there, and I'm attaching photographs to support this. The nature of the cobbled surface to which the yellow lines are applied and the subsequent years of neglect of maintenance mean that they hardly show, but they are there. Our point is that statement 3.3 is incorrect, and therefore COLAS is also incorrect in their statement in the report as mentioned in 3.4. Whilst I concede the evidence is faint, it is clearly there and would have been there in 2004. It was certainly more in evidence when we moved into our property in 2009. We would ask merely that if Highbury Street is to have double yellow lines, that they are at the same time double yellow lines. At the same time double yellow lines are reinstated into the area of the street behind the pub, so that the turning circle is made available for those using Highbury Street, including those who will use the new parking bay, ourselves and pub delivery vehicles as a safe place to reverse. We note also that the report makes no mention of the lack of drop curbs where Highbury Street turns into the area behind the pub, which is raised in some letters submitted and which causes users of the street difficulties. It appears from the report that it is going forward for recommendation, but I hope this important point will be taken into account. If, however, it is not going to form any part of the decision making, I would like to take this opportunity to make a formal application to have the double yellow lines applied to this part of Highbury Street, and would ask for a meeting on site with a representative of Traffic and Transport Office, as well as someone from COLAS. And those are the two representations. The Highbury Street report is the proposal for double yellow lines on the northeast side of Highbury Street for 48 metres, and then a 5 metre parking bay at the end of the cul-de-sac end of Highbury Street came about as a result of complaints from people about walking along the road and vehicles obstructing them. It's a number of the representations refer to more than one vehicle, so it's, but the report includes pictures of a couple of vehicles taken from Google Street View. When we got the complaints, we looked at the area because it is unusual to have an area in an RPZ that doesn't have lines, and there is a historic TRO for those, but the reason for the discussion in the report about the lines not being there was whether they were there and have disappeared or whether they were never there. They haven't been there for a very long time. So rather than just paint them down, we thought it was only fair to everybody involved to go through a consultation process which is why we advertised it as part of TRO 86-2020. The consultation has resulted in a number of comments which are in Appendix B, and the proposal put forward is given in Appendix A. I'd just like to say, in terms of that second deputation, what they're talking about is the area behind the Duke of Buckingham. If you look at the plan at the end of Appendix A, there's a very short plan. The turning area is surrounded by 2A. I don't know, there's a 2A notation on the plan, and that's the, so it's off the main carriageway as you go down Highbury Street. So the recommendation in the report is to implement the proposals as advertised, and also to note that the other proposals in TRO 86-2020 have been implemented because there were no objections to them. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Simon.
No, I've got nothing on that one, Lynn.
Graham?
Just ask a quick question, if I may. The ward councillors either been consulted and just have you all made any representations? Because I notice if you look at the straightforward statistics, most of the residents are against this, but we're recommending in favour. And I'd be interested to know what the ward councillors.
The ward councillors have been consulted, and they don't want to give an opinion.
I mean, the recommendation is based on the double yellow line will help us maintain the footway in terms of stopping vehicles parking on the footway, which we can't do at the moment.
I mean, in many ways, if I can just make a comment, I was interested to know whether they had expressed a view. But it's an interesting example of where sometimes straightforward majority isn't always doing necessarily the best thing. And I think the photographs that do show that the footway is a problem if people park on it, which they are doing.
Yeah.
It does cause inconvenience, and we should protect the footway for that. So I fully understand the reasons for the recommendation and the reasons for not going with what the majority of people wish to do.
It's a really difficult one, and I wrote to Kevin earlier to say I was tempted to say not to go with it and to look at it again, because I think maybe there are other things we could do. I don't know how possible it would be to sort of satisfy. Well, you won't not going to satisfy both sides, but to some kind of compromise. The main objection is they don't want yellow lines on cobbles because it doesn't look very good. But it's not the only place in Old Portsmouth that has cobbles and yellow lines, some yellow lines on it. I don't think.
No, it's not. There are others.
And from a safety point of view, I think it's important that you protect the space, because with a road that's only 2 meters wide, and if there's a car that is parked and is blocking the place, it means that residents, if you're in a wheelchair, if you've got a buggy, you've got to get down onto the road, and that is potentially dangerous. And of course, trying to use a wheelchair over cobbled road or a buggy is not easy. So I think whatever decision I make, it's going to cause problems. So I will go with the recommendation on the basis of safety, but I would like to actually consult or have a meeting or whatever with local people to see if we can come to some solution to help this solve the problem, if we can. I don't know, it's not going to be easy. I mean, the residents say that they don't have a problem with it because they talk it out between themselves, but obviously there's photographic evidence that it does happen, that there is parking on the pavement, which is blocking the pavement. So, and possibly that we need to look at having a dropped curb somewhere. So I think I'll go with the recommendation, but on the basis of safety. But I do want to take this further and examine it further to see if we can come up with any other things that can help. So,
okay.
Does that make sense to you, Kevin?
Yeah, no, very much so.
Okay,
because there were other issues raised during the consultation.
Precisely, yes.
What you recommended was the minimum to deal with the football issue, but as you get in consultations, people have raised other points, and we can certainly look at those.
Yes, quite. So, Anna, I'm happy to go with the recommendations, but I don't know if I don't think you put a caveat, but I think we understand that I think we need to look into this further in the future.
That can go in the minutes, that you want to investigate it further.
Please, because I don't want to upset everybody. I know you can't please everybody, but if people have got genuine concerns either way, we need to see if we can address them if we possibly can. We may not be able to, but let's have a go. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is, thank you, Kevin. The Solent Transport Constitution. Who's going to do that? Is that, it's Felicity. Thank you, Felicity.
That's myself. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to endorse the revisions to the Solent Transport Constitution as set out in the report and in the appended agreement. So when the Solent Transport Partnership was formed in 2007, which at the time was known as Transport for South Hampshire, all parties entered into agreement regarding the governance arrangements. Minor updates have been made and put forward through the Solent Transport Joint Committee to update the Constitution to ensure the document is in line with arrangements and organisational names are correct. So the revised Constitution is required to be signed by each council individually. Therefore, it's been brought to this meeting today. And the recommendations of the paper are to endorse the changes to the Solent Transport Constitution as set out in the report. Thank you.
And that's very basic. It's simply twice a year for both the members' meetings and for the officers. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Graham.
I only have one question really. I was curious to note that the tax report of the Solent Transport is dated October 2017 and refers to minor changes to the Constitution and suggests they might take place in 1780. And it's only come to us now in the 25th of February 2021. Why has it taken so long?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Hold my hands up. It's an oversight. It should have come straight after it went through the Solent Transport Joint Committee. It's come to light now because we've been successful in funding through the Future Transport Zone, and we're now looking to draw down that funding, which obviously has gone to Southampton City Council as the lead authority for that. So to allow us to do that, we do need to have this signed constitution so we can draw down on that funding.
Thank you.
Simon, any comments, questions?
Yes, I've spent many a wonderful time at these meetings in the past. I'm sure you have too, Lynn. The only question I've got is around 3.4.1, that the Constitution of Solent Transport was revised to permit any properly appointed substitute members to attend meetings on behalf of constituent authorities rather than as currently restricted. Now, from memory, and please correct me, properly constituted members currently restricted is effectively the cabinet member for traffic and transportation. And I think there's a lead officer meeting, which is probably you, I would imagine now, Felicity. I would imagine Pam's managed to get rid of that one somehow. But when you're talking about appoint substitute members, who would that be? That would have to be somebody from the existing cabinet, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so my understanding is previously it was outlined that if a member wasn't present from that organisation, then a decision couldn't be made. So we were looking at whether the leader or deputy leader could attend. But my understanding is that obviously now an officer will be able to attend to represent that organisation.
Instead of the member at the member meetings, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because the officers have their own meetings, as I seem to remember, and then the members have meetings where they're the ones that are making the decisions and usually prodded by an officer. But if for the sake of argument, Lynn can't make it, 3.4.1 is allowing effectively a standing deputy to go in her place, as we would have in PCC constitution for our committees. Now, when you look at the PCC constitution, we have named standing deputies. So it can't just be, if Lynn can't make it to a committee meeting, it can't just be any Liberal Democrat, in the same way that on a cross-party committee, it can't just be any Conservative or any Labour member. They are physically named as the standing deputies. Now, I get the fact that it doesn't name Lynn as an individual, it names her position. Who would go in their place? Would it be named as the deputy leader or a member of the cabinet or whatever?
I must admit, yeah, absolutely. I must admit, I don't know the detail of that. Pam, I don't know if you're able to answer that question. Otherwise,
no,
I think
we'll have to take that back to Zola.
I've got a meeting, I don't know if it's tomorrow actually, with or maybe Monday with Conrad, so I can ask him.
I appreciate that. I mean, perhaps I'm being a bit pedantic, but I mean, to have another member in the place of Lynn if she can't make it for whatever reason is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you name it as the person? I doubt it, because you don't name it as being Lynn Stagg or Graham Heaney or whoever may well be the Traffic and Transportation Cabinet member. But are you being prescriptive, or are they being prescriptive at the fact that it must be the leader or the deputy leader? Because again, you run in, I mean, I would have thought it would have been best placed to have been a cabinet member, if you see what I mean. Because if Lynn can't make it, it may mean that Steve Pitt can't make it if it's the deputy leader. Now, I'm sure everybody's going to be rushing to attend these meetings, but I think you need a bit of clarity around who the standing deputy is. And I would suggest different authorities probably have slightly different ways of doing it, but they're probably all working off a cabinet system. It might just be the best way to suggest it is an alternative cabinet member of the administration is probably the simplistic way, and then you've got a pool of willing volunteers to actually take Lynn's place.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a moot point, but yeah. You know, you don't want a situation where you can't make it, Lynn. We say it's the deputy leader, but Gerald turns up as the leader, and somebody there sits there and say, "Oh no, sorry, you're the leader. You're not the deputy leader. You can't come." And I'm sure there are some pedants out there that would do that.
Well, I'll ask about that when I meet with them on Monday. So, otherwise, nothing else from either of you? Okay. Well, I'm happy to endorse the changes to the Constitution. Thank you, Felicity. Now, I think the next one is probably Simon, is it? Simon, not Simon Bosher, Simon Bell.
So I'm going to present the report, and then Simon's here for technical questions.
Right.
And I think Councillor Willington's here to make a deputation on this one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. You've timed that well. Welcome. Have you got any declarations of interest?
No, I haven't. Mobley. Shall I go first before the presentation, or do you want to present the report first?
I think it's usual to present the report first, isn't it? I think, yes.
Yep, happy to, no problem. So the purpose of this paper is to outline Portsmouth City Council's current position on the supported bus services and to seek agreement to extend the 5 existing contracts to the 31st of December 2021. So this includes the services 12, the 13, 14, the 22 and the 25. The coronavirus pandemic has had a major impact on public transport ridership and for the number of passengers travelling by bus. But these services are still essential to allow key workers to access employment and for residents to access health and make essential journeys. Current ridership levels on supported services does not reflect the likely ridership once we are out of the pandemic. Therefore, it just makes it really difficult for planning bus services at this time and the expected levels of ridership. So we're recommending that the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation approves the extension of all 5 services from the 27th of March to the 31st of December to allow time to understand how ridership is likely to increase and undertake a full procurement process. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we have any other deputations, do we, Anna? Is she there? Anna, are you there?
Yeah, no, just unmuting. No, there's none others for this.
Okay, right, thanks. Matt, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you very much, Lynn, and thank you, Simon, and hello, Simon and Graham, and officers. I'd like to thank everyone for bringing this report forward and wholeheartedly support the extension of the funding for the tendered services for the next 12 months. I think that the services that we had already running, the 12, the 13, 14 and the 22 were all really essential to their areas, being as they are linking up shopping streets, areas that people need to get to, and linking in areas of the city where there's either or elderly populations for which bus travel might be their only way of travelling around, and also deprived populations as well. As I say, in some cases, combinations of the two. Also, they're some of our most isolated communities in the city as well, that are sort of a bit out on a limb. So places like Tipner and Highbury as well, which is sort of a cul-de-sac, and also in north of there in Drayton Arlington as well, where it's sort of a bit off the beaten track when you get away from the main roads. So and then that brings me to the 25. Obviously the 25 was brought in, and thank you so much everyone who was involved in getting that going. It's having no bus service in Eastney for the period that the 15 and 16 was stopped by first bus till the 25 came in was really poor for that community. That has a lot of people on low incomes. It has a lot of older people as well who are reliant on bus services to get around, and it was a real pain not having that there. And of course we had the Hayling ferry, which had restarted, and there was no bus there when it's for a period of time. So the 25 has been an absolute godsend. Also, it connected up the areas down in the from Old Portsmouth, Southsea shops as well, which was a fantastic thing that really needed it. And it brought back a bus service to Waverley Road for the first time, I think, for 3.5, 4 years. So that was really welcome as well. So for that reason, I wholeheartedly support that. But also, and just a bit of information for members at this meeting, I've just been talking to Colin Hill, the skipper of the Hayling ferry, which of course has been shut during lockdown, and they are looking to get the Hayling ferry back up and running on the 29th of March. So that would actually fit in really well if this is approved today to get the funding for the next year. Looking at the numbers for the bus services, I think all of them were either holding steady or actually increasing on where they were the year before lockdown started last year. And obviously you could see with the 25 that after that very short period in August when it was running, in September and before the lockdown, October before lockdown, actually the ridership was pretty healthy. And I think it really, as the report says, as Felicity has just alluded to, that ridership of these services is really important and will be really good again once we get out of lockdown, and indeed as we get into the warmer months, particularly for the 25 because of the nature of what it connects up to. So really that's my plea. Please do agree the extension for a year. I'm confident that that whatever we need to do this time next year, and I hope, we're not just talking about a year, we're talking far into the future, will be substantially less, because I would imagine the ridership on all of these services will get back to very healthy levels, and they are absolutely critical to connecting our communities right across the city. So thank you very much for bringing it here, and I hope that they go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Simon, any questions or comments?
No, just a comment, Lynn. I mean, I think this is something with these services that we've been talking about in our meetings for seems like 6 months more. In so much that it's also got to do a lot with the disparity between the contracts ending as well. And I think the whole thrust of this is twofold, and I agree with both of them. It's to get all the contracts finishing at the same time, so we've got one position of negotiation rather than doing it piecemeal throughout the second half of this year. And it's also, as Matthew said, now that we're looking at coming out of lockdown in June, it really doesn't make any sense to start fiddling around with established bus services that we are subsidising just at the point when we're likely to see hopefully a large increase in bus usage. I mean, the number 22 is the one that concentrates in my area, and it tends to sort of run around Highbury and Cossam. When it comes up, then it services the Sainsbury's store in Barlington. And I have to say, the figures don't surprise me too much in the fact that they've dropped off. A, because buses have been limited and have been limiting their passenger numbers. And B, the vast majority of the people that use that service are actually very elderly people, and they've been finding alternative ways to avoid things like public transport, as has a large number of the population. So to my mind, it makes total sense to keep going with this, firstly so that we're in a decent contract position, but perhaps more importantly so we can get a better idea as we come out of lockdown what the bus usage actually is. And certainly going into a summer, and hopefully if we come out in June, we've got July, August, and hopefully an Indian summer, that bus usage and people getting out and about in the city, it's the right thing to stick with what people know and what people are used to. So has my support anyway.
Lovely, thank you, Simon. Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly see the logic of getting contracts together so that we don't have contracting exercises going on, intermittently through the year. It's clearly sensible to do that, particularly when you only have a limited number of companies involved. I just wanted to clarify about how many times we can roll a contract forward and whether there is any requirement for us to tender within a particular period for the bus services. Anyone?
Felicity.
Yes, there is. Simon, do you have the detail to that, please?
Yeah, I do. Yes, sorry. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you.
I mean, we can tender normally for up to a period of 5 years. So in particular, Service 25 was a new experimental service to start with. It replaced, as Councillor Winston said, the loss of Service 15, 16 and 6 it did. So we do have the opportunity to extend these contracts. Service 22 is coming towards the 5-year period now because it was awarded some years ago.
Right. Yeah. So actually 5 years is our maximum. We can't go beyond 5 years.
Well, it would be, it would technically, I think it technically would be possible if we get agreement from the head, but most authorities don't normally award contracts for more than 5 years.
Yeah, thanks.
Anything else, Graham?
Nope, happy to support. No, it's fine.
Okay, yes, so fully approve the extension. I think it's important. And I mean, services like the 12, for example, because Tipner had nothing, no bus service whatsoever, and out on a limb. So I'm really pleased about that. So yes, happy to approve that. And I think the last one, if I'm not mistaken, concessionary bus fares. And I think, is that you again, or is it Simon?
Yes. It's me again, and again, any technical questions, Simon is here to support. Do you want me to start presenting? Yeah. Okay, so the concessionary fares scheme reimbursement to bus operators. So this report outlines the recommendations for the reimbursement to bus operators for concessionary bus travel in 2020 2021 and 2022. Due to Portsmouth City Council proposing to change the reimbursement levels in line with government guidance, a decision needs to be taken to this traffic and transportation meeting. So Portsmouth City Council administers the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme for residents of the city. The scheme allows eligible pass holders, sorry, I can't find my words today, eligible pass holders free travel on local bus. The council are required to provide bus companies with 28 days notice of reimbursement arrangements and any change to reimbursement levels. Government guidance has been provided which recommends that concessionary fares reimbursement should reflect the level of service provided to the local area. And therefore the recommendations of the paper are that the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation notes the contents of the report. Secondly, revises the reimbursement to bus operators to one based on the percentage of mileage operated in accordance with guidance issued by the Department of Transport in November 2020. And thirdly, delegates authority to the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation in conjunction with the Director of Regeneration and the Section 151 officer to make any necessary changes within the allocated budget. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Felicity. Graham.
Yeah, quite a technical issue. But will we end up basically paying the same amount of money to?
No, I don't think so. I think the whole point is that we pay less. Am I right, Felicity?
Yes, so it's looking at the mileage that the buses actually are operating. So currently, I think we're around the sort of 50–60%. Obviously, as we come out of lockdown, bus operators are expecting to increase that mileage, and that's one of the reasons we've recommended recommendation 2.3. As things change, obviously they change quite quickly, and therefore we wanted to ensure that we were in line with government guidance as it goes forward.
Well, I think the bus companies get some money anyway, don't they, from the government to
yeah, so there's a CBSSG grant which has been given from central government throughout the pandemic.
Anything else, Graham? No. Simon.
No, it looks like it's just a noting report anyway, Lynn, in what you've actually got. And it's going to bring our costs down by the looks of it from about 4.2 million down to 3.8 or probably even less than that. So any report that's going to do that is pretty welcome with me in that respect.
Good, lovely. Well, yes, I've noted the contents of the report, revised the reimbursement to bus operators, and approved the delegation authority to myself or whoever might be there in my place if I should drop dead tomorrow, and the Director of Regeneration, the Section 151 officer for the monetary side of it. So I think that's all for today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your contribution. Thank you all officers for all your input and the work behind it all. Have a nice evening. I've now got a governor training session, so I can't relax. So and the rest of you have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
I'll turn the live stream off. You're still audible for a couple of minutes.